Everybody, we're going to call to order the meeting of the Finance Administration Committee, August the 3rd, 2017. I'd like to thank Ms. Jones and Mr. Johnson for being here from the Treasurer's Office. Also, Councilman Vaught, thank you for being here. Chairman Creech and all the staff members here. So, appreciate everybody's time this morning. We're going to ask Mr. Ives to do the invocation and Mr. Gray to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ask everyone to bow their heads, please. Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you for all of our gifts. And we thank you also for being blessed with this county, the residents who live here. May the business we conduct be in their favor and in your favor. And this we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We just need an approval for the agenda this morning. If I could have a motion
So moved.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll move right into the Murph update. Ms. Bidding.
Yes, good morning. I'm going to be very brief with this because a lot of it hasn't changed since I did present it at the board meeting the other night. The main thing I kind of wanted to take a look at, of course, as I had mentioned to you, we had not finished out closing out the year, so we still had some invoices coming in, so some of the expenses would change, and that is where you'll see the main difference here. As you can see for the month, the revenue is still at $437,584.70, with the expenses being $710,547.89. As you're aware, of course, that number is extremely high as compared to what we normally have each month. And as I said, if June is always our catch-up month. You know, we've got a lot of things that are being expensed in June, with the biggest part of that being labor. We had several labor bills that we're holding to try to get cleared up with the labor companies where they had billed us incorrectly. So we probably had about an additional $180,000 in labor costs in the month of June that's in this figure from previous months that we were getting caught up. As we mentioned, I think at the board meeting as well, we had some equipment expenses with some belts that had to be replaced. That was around $70,000 this month.
Stop you a second.
Yes, sir.
The reason why those were invoiced incorrectly?
There were different things. One had to do with a fee that they were charging us for, like an insurance type fee. And so we were going back and forth with them, trying to get them to correct the bills. And it's, like I said, you're dealing with different people and different labor companies. I'm not sure how many different labor companies. We're currently using about 6 or 7 different labor companies, as well as the amount they were billing us. You know, like I said, we're checking it very thoroughly because we're dealing with so many different people. That there were some of the bills that we had to kind of go back and forth on with them. So it was kind of a number of different things.
Okay.
We're also charging them every time that they don't turn in a vest or safety glasses, you know, things like that. So sometimes we're going back and forth with them on that as well to make sure that they're actually paying us back for that.
What we did on that was that, you know, some of them may have submitted, we checked their time cards against the invoice. So they may have charged us for 10 hours and an employee didn't work at all. So what we were doing was asking them to send us a corrected invoice. Well, they just kept holding them and carrying them over and carrying them over. We have changed that policy. Currently, we will send them notification of the change and short pay the invoice.
Yeah, our policy normally is not to pay an invoice without it being correct. But in this instance, like I said, because we're dealing with so many of them, these employees need to get paid as well. Like I said, so we're going to go ahead and make the changes on the invoices. So you won't see this, hopefully, where it's a carryover type thing. So
That expense number had the potential to be much higher had the corrections not been made and we weren't diligent.
Exactly, yes, sir. For sure. And of course, a couple other just little things, you know, during the month of June, like I said, the actual airspace costs that we have each month where we're actually paying for a portion of the rejects that we sent to out of the county, as well as the actual rejects that we sent over here to the landfill. Those were a little bit higher as well, just because you're talking about paying, you know, you're actually paying for May and June in the month of June. So like I said, just some little things that actually made up those costs. But year to date, they still ended up very good. Like I said, as you can see, their revenue year to date was $5,170,752.14, and their expenses year to date of $4,688,881.52. So year to date, our revenue was over expenses by $481,870.62. So like I said, you know, biggest thing is, like I said, if you look at the last two sheets in this packet, where we have FY 16 and 17, as you can see, the expenses aren't a whole lot more from each year. Like I said, about $200,000 more in this year than last year, but the revenues we've definitely seen the increases. So, I have to say again, you know, that they've done a great job holding their expenses. Like I said, they've definitely, that's not where their increase is. Thank goodness that, you know, the increase has definitely been in the revenue.
What were those last two sheets you were?
It's the Murph summary sheets. It's the last two sheets in that packet that you've got, Mr. Gray.
Page 8 and 9.
Yeah, mine aren't numbered.
I got a
Oh,
pre-
I started to say,
tablet.
he's got a hard copy of it that I gave him, so they're not numbered. But it's the last two pages. It says the Murph summary, and we've got FY 16 and FY 17. The first one being 17, the second one being 16. And so I just wanted to point out, like I said, that it is definitely an increase in revenue, not in, you know, like I said, not a great increase in expenses.
Where's that showing? That number right there. Yeah, so,
If you're looking at FY 17 right there, at the very last line, at the $4,688,881, that's the actual expenses. I mean, the revenue for, expenses, excuse me, I'm getting it out right. Expenses for the year. And if you flip over to the next sheet, which is FY 16,
I'm sorry,
oh,
okay. Does this just correlate with the numbers? Are we looking only at Murph or total?
this is just the Murph, yes, sir. Just the Murph
But-
operations.
But it's no different than. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Same numbers, just analyzed a different way.
Same numbers as,
The first sheet you talked about.
yes, sir, exactly, yes, sir. It all correlates together,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Well, I think it's remarkable that, with all that, blood, sweat, and tears that went into this, year, with, all that we went through, I won't elaborate on that. And, you know, we didn't have a rate increase, which we asked for, and that was deferred, to this year. And we had all those learning experiences with, the relationship with Charleston still showed in the black. And I know where 99 and 44, 100% of the blood, sweat, and tears came from. And Danny, you and your staff are to be commended. Outstanding job.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Jan, I'd like to back up a page and go to the page just prior and review for us the outgoing reject analysis that you've presented.
Yes, sir. What that is that's actually the tonnage that we actually sent out of the county. As you can see, like I said, you know, this is where we were also trying to compensate the day-for-day airspace savings. And so this shows you what we actually, for just this year, the actual tonnage, we sent out 5,903.25 tons of material from our C&D recycling facility out of Horry County to save that day-for-day landfill airspace savings.
And the good news is going forward, we won't see that.
That's exactly right. And currently, we do have it caught up. And current, we are even on our days of landfill airspace savings.
That's the good news.
And that's right, starting Tuesday, I think it was when the new contract went into place. And so that's when all of the rejects above our 14.5% is actually going back to Charleston.
Great.
Yes, sir.
What, are we still giving them credit, for lack of a better term, threshold? We don't count the first 14.5%. By contract, we allow that much, or we,
14.5% of our material
Yeah.
is going into the landfill. Anything above that goes back to Charleston. Yes, sir.
There's no allowances on the new contract for the 14.5%.
Okay. I thought we'd made a change, but it's
That was
just
a change.
starting
Right.
now.
Yes, sir.
100% of the
So-
Charleston.
Goes back.
Goes back. Yes, sir.
Well, that's another thing. You drive a hard bargain, Bubba. That's a big change. And that way, when we stand before our superiors, there ain't a damn drop of Charleston stuff being buried in Horry County. Nothing.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say one thing on the Charleston thing, briefly.
talk a little bit about Charleston's concerns yesterday.
Want me to talk about them? Charleston had sent us an email earlier in the week saying that they thought that, based on the reports they were getting, where Jan was showing what percentage was going into our landfill, that was the total rejects for the MRF as the total. So they were feeling like that was the total rejects, but yet when they looked at it, the total rejects, when they looked at what was going back to them, the total rejects was around 30%. So they thought we had overcharged them by 14% in rejects. So there was a big discussion in that yesterday, and I think we've got that cleared up.
Going our way.
Yeah, I mean, they just didn't understand the reportings, what it amounted to, but there was some confusion in Charleston. Her report shows what was going, 16% was going into our landfill the last year, and they were saying, well, you showing me 30% that was coming out, we hauled this amount back, so you should pay us for X. But after we got through explaining the report, I think they understood it better.
Good. Where do we stand on commodities prices right now? What's the future look like? And
Right now, cardboard's through the roof. We're selling it domestically at about $2.42 this month. Our revenue, without any adjustments to it or anything, but our revenue for this month's about $631,000. And because there's really a lot of outstanding expenses, I see expenses being low this month, and it'll be up there pretty good, I'm hoping.
good.
I have a question on
Yes,
that. At $242 per ton on fiber cardboard, I know that's a good number, but compared to when it was at its low, where was it?
At its low, it was running about 130
So not quite 100% more.
in the last 12 months, yeah. But you got to realize now, in June's revenue, if you look at June's revenue report, we had about 1,000 tons on the floor.
Right.
So I've got that out this month, and that's why one of the reasons the revenue is so high this month is
You got it
because
out,
I've
the
cleaned,
price is high, that's
I pushed it to get it out, I demanded that it went out, and we have continued to sell it at that price.
Used to be on the
so,
Chicago Board of Exchange. I mean, you know how to play the market, Bubba.
I get lucky sometimes,
All about timing, isn't it?
yeah.
Any other questions about the MRF or Ms. Bidding, anything else on the update?
No, sir, like I said, I'll be presenting this on the 8th to INR.
Okay,
So,
great.
The next item I've got on here is just, of course, with the Horry County Treasurer, Angie Jones is very happy to come and be here with us this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I mentioned to her a couple meetings ago, we had some questions about some of our investments and that type of thing, and so I just thought if she came, maybe she could hear what some of your concerns are, what some of your thoughts are on our investments, just kind of have some open discussion, and that way she's here to answer any questions. Like I said, I know she's been extremely busy since she started, so I know she's just getting her feet wet with the investments, I'm sure. But anyway, I just thought that way we could kind of let her know what we were thinking. So, Angie, I'm gonna turn it over to you even.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. And guys, I don't mind coming anytime you have any questions, or if you just want to call my cell phone, you're welcome to do that too.
Thanks for
So,
being here.
what are your questions regarding the investments?
Well, I think like anybody, we would like to see the highest return on the investments with the lowest amount of risk. Now, I know that sounds like the impossible dream, but I do think there was some concerns about the way that the money was being invested in the relatively low amount of return in interest income for the amount of money that we were talking about. So, and we understand that there's some regulations and guidelines that restrict the way that that money's invested, but we just wanted to make sure that we were doing everything possible to explore opportunities to make sure, because of that amount of money, that if there were avenues out there to increase the interest on the investments, that we would do that without placing that in any greater risk.
If I
Right.
may,
Right.
Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, we also have three different pots, if you will. One is our day-to-day expenses, which we understand were pooled in a $10 million pool. We didn't have a problem using the funds that you had for that. We also have an intermediate term needs, which are projects that we have that are timed and we have replacement of capital equipment. But the third area is our long-range
Right.
fund, which is a huge opportunity for us to seek the best return. And that was what our request was. And I hope you take it constructively and not as an arrow, but as a suggestion. We feel like we have a fiduciary responsibility over the funds, but our charter says you're to get our excess funds, and you have an elected fiduciary, which we understand exceeds ours. But we think that should be shopped, and that you could use the opportunity of talking to brokers and not just banks on what the latest Federal Home Loan Bank Board rate is, that you could shop other avenues that still meet the objectives of being prudent, but finding the best rate that we can find that still meets the guidelines that you want to make sure they're safe.
Right, and just looking at these agencies that are out there now, these rates are definitely not outstanding. There's no question about that. The rates are turning around, but I do want to say what we do or have been doing, I mean, I've been gone a year, you guys know that, but what we have done in the past is Jan's usually pretty good about giving us projections on the expenses and the money you'll need. So the state investment pool right now is actually doing pretty good considering. I mean, it's at 1.086, and I mean, that's pretty good. And that's your money that we leave liquid. That way, if you need it tomorrow, we can get it back to you tomorrow. Now, these investments here do not look outstanding by any sense of the word, and I do agree with you, Mr. Bowe. There are other opportunities. I like what's called a step-up. I always have. And what those are is you purchase it just like you do. I mean, it's Federal Home Loan. It's the agencies like that. But every quarter, they raise. And see, if they hold out for, let's say, 2.5, 3 years, your return is going to be 3.5%. And I like those. The reason we go through Wells Fargo a lot to do the broker side of things is they don't charge a fee, basically. Our 1 cent monies are in First Citizens Bank. However, the fee that they charge is nowhere close to how they step this money out. I mean, we make a lot of interest income on that money. So what we can do is we'll get together and just, if you'll let me know what we have liquid and what we can do, Steve Groth is actually coming from First Citizens August the 10th to come have lunch with me. And I will be glad to get some options from him because I call him our master banker.
If they know there's a competition, they might
Exactly.
just try to find the best. And as you well know, the power of compounding, especially for something as long range as our
Right.
post-closure account, that boost of additional return would save our residents and our business
Exactly.
a huge sum of money.
And the reason I like First Citizens is because they have a team of experts, per se. And if you say, let's say you got $20 million, Steve will take that money and step it out. It might be a 3-month that's at a really good deal. Then turn around and get a 6, a 9, a year and a half. So you constantly have your money maturing. So if you had an emergency situation, it's not tied up for 3.5 years. So it is a good idea. And I will be glad when I meet with him, get some different options. If you'll get me, some numbers that you think we can, I don't want to call it play with, but invest.
Sure.
For, a 3-year period of time. I mean, I think that's an absolute excellent idea. And as these mature at these rates here, I mean, that 1.5 is decent, but anything else on this list, I don't know if y'all got the breakdown, but I can leave this with
Rodney
you.
gave us one 2 months ago.
Yeah, you're right, that does not look very good at all. So I agree, and I'm here to help.
In view, and in line with what Bo was saying, I have served, am serving, or have served on, I serve now and have served on the 4A Georgetown Tech Foundation Board. And for a number of years, I've served on the State Technical College Board, Foundation Board. Going over to 4A Georgetown Tech, they use Merrill Lynch. And the Merrill Lynch guy comes down every quarter, and time is set aside for him to report on what he sees as performance to date and trends. And the local guy who's on the board, you know him, I'll think of his name in a minute, tall guy.
James Johnson?
I'm sorry?
Is it James?
No. Anyway,
I think you're talking about Hugh Martin.
yeah, Hugh.
Yeah.
Hugh is on our board, and he is, has skills in his own right, but he's the chief financial officer of our board, and he's the one who deals mostly with the guy from Merrill Lynch in Columbia. But where I'm going with this is that we have similar guidelines about which funds to, risk versus reward, that sort of thing. But the most recent year that I believe it was calendar year, after expenses, our corpus is about $10 million, was 7.2% return. And then I'll switch over to the State Tech Board. Just before I left, they had turned the management over to a company in Sumter that was, I don't recall the name, but it was run by a lady who had set up a practice that she only managed funds for government organizations, such as the State Board. And they had greater returns. And in fact, we had the State Board had some pretty sharp people on it and on its staff. And you're new, this concept is new. Do you think you'd have time to take a meeting with them and just sit down, I don't mean between now and the next meeting or the next month, and listen to what they have to say and make a decision as to whether, and I know that there are some requirements that state and county that you may have to and do have to meet that we may not. I mean, there may be some pretty stiff restrictions, but that's also true with the two boards I just mentioned. But could I ask them to call you and you just have a chat with them?
Yeah,
please?
absolutely, Mr. Gray. I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
And the only thing that I know of out there as far as, I have never in my 11 years as deputy treasurer seen a return of 7%. But, with public funds, the main concern for us is all public funds has to be collateralized. So the collateralization, there's a cost with that. I mean, and I can tell you right now that local banks aren't taking really anything right now, because if you can't loan money out, they don't need money in. So, these agencies here are safe. But yeah, I'll be glad to meet, as long as they're safe, secure, collateralized, and we're not gonna lose anything, I'll talk to anybody.
Well, I can say as to the foundation, local, or Georgetown Tech Board, even during the worst of times, the return wasn't great, but we never lost. We never went backwards.
Yeah, see, we can't lose anything. That's just, we can't, by law.
Well, and they just move in.
Yeah,
long
exactly.
when-
And that's why the return is not as great on instruments that are considered low risk or safe.
Thank you.
Well, obviously, any increase in the compounding benefit, would make a difference. So that's really our concern, just to make sure that we understand that we can't place any of that at risk and not asking anybody to. We just want to maximize that return with whatever and want to explore. I know there were some relationships in the past, but there's been a changing of the guard, and we felt like it was a good opportunity just to bring that up again and at least have options explored and
Yeah, and
to make sure
I
that-
like
okay.
to diversify.
Sure,
I think we need to. I mean, you had mentioned Merrill Lynch, and I've got the guy, his name is James Johnson, down at Merrill Lynch, and I was gonna meet with him in the coming months as well, because I want different options. We don't need to put all of our eggs in
Specialist
one
market,
basket.
and they understand it. That's right.
Yeah,
That's terrific.
exactly.
I also would like to commend you. Janice told us that working with your staff has been terrific, and the reception that she got when she met with your staff and talked to your staff.
And y'all are welcome to come and meet him anytime you
So
get ready.
thank you for
You're welcome.
working with her.
And
so
thank
close.
y'all.
All right, Well, I will. I'll get with you, Angie, and like I said, I'll kind of let you know what we've got to play with. We don't have any big projects coming up for quite some time, so that's good. So that gives us some time, but like I said, I'll get with you on that. Would we like for maybe to come back, and maybe give it a couple of months at least,
Oh, yeah.
and give her a chance to kind of meet with some people and that kind of thing, and maybe in a couple of months, I'll let you know when our next meeting is,
Okay,
and kind of set
perfect.
something up.
I'll be glad to come back.
Right, well, I appreciate you coming very much.
Thank you.
And that's all that I have for today.
Anything? Dan?
I just want to say to Angie, I went to several of your stump speakings, although we don't call them that anymore. And I had not known you that well before, but you had some good competition, and but I noticed in the meetings you immediately gained the acceptance of the audience, and the reasoning was that it didn't take just a few minutes for everybody to figure out. You knew what you were talking about. You were well prepared to speak, but also you were well prepared for the job. So I feel a great deal of confidence that, you got to go through a learning curve, but just like we all do. But you start way ahead of most of the other rabbits that are running, I can tell you right now.
Thank you.
You must not know her mother.
I don't.
You should.
Well, we're glad to have you here and look forward to working with you further and really appreciate your time
I do
today.
too. And thank you
Good,
guys.
thank you. Anything else from the committee on the finance administration? Staff? If not, we'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.